recording. Yes, we are recording. Um, New microphone, obviously. Um, that is distracting. Why, why are you like that? Why are you like that? Come on. Come on, QuickTime player. I believe in you. Or not, whatever. That's distracting, that little light on that box. So I still don't know what I'm doing at all. So please bear with me, everybody. This new microphone. It's got a windscreen on it, and then this thing is supposed to stop poofs. Is my lip cut? I think it is. But I do like this because I can sit back now instead of doing this weird face right here. I do. Man, I got some crazy acne today. Whatever. Because I can sit back now, and that's incredibly enjoyable. I think this jacket makes a lot of noise. Plus, still want to hide this badass sweatshirt, which one day, when the podcast gets more money, I'll put sweatshirts and shit online, but not right now. Need a haircut. Point is, had my guest canceled today. That'll be a story for sometime in the distant future. I'll be able to tell. Yeah, Thursday. What's today? 14th, January 14th. Remind me in like 6 months, and I'll tell the story. So today, I kind of want to go into. I'm also kind of politicked out. I mean, right now there are 25,000 National Guard troops in the United States Capitol. Trump is banned from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Parler was taken down by Amazon and Apple. And you cannot comment on Trump's YouTube or the White House YouTube. But I don't know. I kind of want to talk about this, but I kind of want to talk about who's going to be the first trillionaire. I don't know. Which one do I want to do? Fuck it. It seems like the die has been cast. I don't want to talk about politics 60 seconds later. The die has been cast. But it seems that way. And I feel crazy, and I very well could be. As I've publicly stated before, I voted for Obama in 2008, Romney in 2012, Bernie in the primaries in 2016, didn't vote in the general election, and Trump in the 2020 general election. So I've jumped from side to side several times, and each time I'm on one side, I'm convinced that that is correct. And before, I mean, obviously I couldn't vote before I voted for Obama, but before that, I was right-leaning, like early high school. And then before that, in like middle school, I was like left-leaning. And it's so like each time I've been convinced that this, quote unquote, this is my view at the time is the correct view, which, if that's not the plight of all of humanity. But I was also convinced in high school that I wanted to, or in middle school, that I wanted to play in the NBA. In high school, I was convinced I wanted to be a bodybuilder, a personal trainer. In college, I was convinced I wanted to be a doctor. After college, I was convinced I wanted to be a pharmacist. After that, I was convinced I wanted to do mental health charity. After that, I was convinced I wanted to write. After that, I was convinced I wanted to do comedy. After that, I was convinced I wanted to do Photoshop. After that, I was convinced I wanted to make my own satirical news website. I called it FNN, Fuck It News Network. Tagline was, "You die alone in a nursing home, might as well have a chuckle before you flatline." If you can't tell, I was kind of in a bad place in my life. Had some chicken pesto for breakfast or lunch. Yeah, and then wanted to do graphic design, and then doing this podcast. And I feel like I'm finally at home doing this podcast. I legitimately do. More so than any other time in my life, I feel like I'm at home. Every other time I got into something, I felt like it was right, but there wasn't a feeling of this is like the definitive. I just felt like I was right where I was, but I never once thought like, and this is where I'm going to be forever. I was just very convinced that this is right for me right now. And if anyone tried to challenge that, I'd be like, you don't know. Like, no, I am where I'm supposed to be. This podcast is the only time I've ever felt not just like this is the right thing for me, but like this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm sure I'll have other hobbies and shit going forward, but who the fuck cares? No one gives a fuck about me. Why the fuck am I sitting here jerking off to you guys? I don't really want to do politics. I think Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire. I think Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire because what he's doing is, well, one, we know he's several steps ahead. Christian Davenport talks about in his book Space Barons about how smart Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are, and how a lot of times Elon will close his eyes during like a meeting and just tell everyone to be silent. And he'll sit there for a couple minutes, maybe a couple seconds, maybe a couple minutes, and kind of just look out into the possible like chess moves out into the future. And this is too tight. And I think one of the quotes is like one time he did it for like 8 minutes, and like one of his like top guys looked at someone else and they're like, he just looked into the future. Granted, you're probably getting some of that fearless leader people around him. Steve Jobs, probably the same. You know, people from New England with Bill Belichick, Trump supporters, myself included. Right? But he does seem to do it. I mean, I don't know if he still is, but as of last Thursday, a week ago today, he's the richest man in the world. Not the richest man of all time, the richest man in the world. He was at 189 billion. He eclipsed Bezos. Bezos broke 200 billion last summer. Nobody's held a fucking candle to Mansa Musa though. Motherfucker's worth 400 billion. I think they said Carnegie and Rockefeller adjusted were around 300 billion apiece. I could be wrong. And there's an argument that Alexander the Great was worth, is it 4.3 trillion? I've heard that argument before because technically, I don't know why I'm saying I heard that argument. I read 2 sentences on Wikipedia once. Because technically he owned, like his whole kingdom, technically like he owned, so it was his, so it's all wealth. But so that would be like saying, you know, that would be like saying Trump is a trillionaire, or Xi Jinping is a trillionaire. Kind of, I don't know if that really works. You could argue that they do move the force of it, but that seems more like you're a hedge fund manager, not your value. But with Elon, in Christian Davenport's book, and I think this is where it's from, he talks about, I'm going to slowly face this, see if that makes a difference in my talking. If anybody has any tips on how to use this microphone, let me know. I've got a windscreen on it, the poof filter, and I've got this big semi-sphere made out of PET. I don't know what it stands for, but it's supposed to absorb all sound around it, but it's just massive and takes up like half the screen. So I haven't used it yet, but I bet it's dope. But it's really dope. I might need to get a stand for that and just put that shit right here. Who cares? Who cares if it blots out half the screen? Also, if anyone knows how to get the 4K to work, is that just my laptop? Jesus Christ, I'm getting off topic. He said that he was going to get to, and he said this before, I am amassing wealth so that I can singularly fund our settling of Mars, and I'm not dependent on the U.S. government or a publicly owned company, board of directors, blah, 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 blah. And he said one way he's going to do that is obviously Tesla makes bank. He had Solar City, but I believe he sold that or dissolved it or whatever, which in itself was brilliant. He dissolved it so that there were no more patents on anything, so that the patents were free to everyone else to use to advance solar power, because if more people had solar power and it became a bigger movement, a green movement, more people would be interested in EV vehicles or electric vehicles. So he sees far ahead, but he said he was going to fund our trip or our settling of Mars by he said he was going to do it by taking down, or he said we're going to like challenge like the FAA, and everybody's like, what does that have to do with anything? Challenge the FAA. And he said it's because by using these self-landing rockets, reusable, and thus you're getting, you're dramatically decreasing the price to put things in orbit, or just whatever, or no orbit, as well as turnaround time. By doing that, he could use that to. I was talking to a friend earlier, and he was like, if you note that Musk doesn't take on, he doesn't go into, I don't know how to word this. He goes into established industry. I mean, he's a disruptor, right? I hate that term, disruptophobe, from Rick and Morty. But he goes into things and challenges them directly, like a car industry. You could say VR, or even nootropics, right? He's going in with Neuralink. Obviously SpaceX. But he goes into these established things with the intent of flipping them. He doesn't necessarily go in and with the intent of creating a new man, I hope he goes in and makes a phone. I would love that. I would love if he made, because Apple's going to right, they want to make an Apple car. I would love if Tesla went in and started making iPhones, or I would buy those immediately. Fucking M1 chip. I want a Musk 1 chip. I want an Elon chip. I want an Elon 19-inch. That's what she said. And I would buy that computer tomorrow. That's a lie. I don't have any money. But I would. I would save up for it. But yeah, so he wants to take on the FAA to fund Mars. And when he first said that, people were like, what in the world does that even mean? And he said by reusing these rockets, you could put people, and I probably am making up these, but they're insane times. It's not, every once in a while you hear about like a new hypersonic plane, an idea, right? The Concorde's coming back. And we could chop down times from here to here, but they're also not unheard of times, because like they have been done before. Granted, not publicly, but like an SR-71 or something. Like, we do know what happens. He wanted to, let's see, SpaceX, airlines, 2 hours ago, SpaceX confirms first U.S. East Coast ISS Dragon cargo return. It's a very specific first. Sounds like SportsCenter fact of the day or whatever it was. Airlines. Oh, come on. Commercial airlines. I'm butchering this. Whatever. The point is he can take those, and wants to be able to fly. They're insane times from like DC to Mumbai in like 25 minutes. London to LA in like 18 minutes. New York City to Melbourne in like 31 minutes. Like, insane shit. Like North Pole, South Pole, like 25 minutes. And by doing that, it would be a quantum leap. It would be a complete change, right? It's just like Tesla coming in. And Tesla is one of two U.S. based car companies that's never gone bankrupt. And it's now, I think its market cap is like 10 times that of GM. I know it's larger than Walmart now. And, well, this could all have been as of last week when he became the richest man. Oh no, China virus, have a reprise. But by doing that, you would completely shift everything, right? You'd have your guinea pigs. A lot of people probably die first. But I mean, if you go back and look at those interviews of him saying that he's going to land rockets and he's going to private space flight, and he's being interviewed by that guy in 60 Minutes, and then he's like, Elon's like, I look up to all like my heroes in like space, like the space history, and the interviewer is like, well, actually, I talked to them, and they kind of think like you're an idiot. And that's like the meme where like Elon's crying because he's like, that's hard to hear, because it's guys like Buzz Aldrin and I guess other guys up there who are like, that's stupid, you can't do that, it's not going to work. But then like he goes on to do it, land spacecraft. So like that's insane to the point where it's like not even that, like, I mean, it's still cool to watch a YouTube video, but it's not like tearing up and chanting USA. It's kind of, we've just accepted it, right? There'll never be a touchscreen phone, and then it's very quickly like, yeah, it's just the norm, right? There'll never be 4K gaming, and now it's the new Xbox does 8K gaming, which they're still sold out. I'm trying to swear a little less. So it could be a norm. I drove a Tesla for the first time last week. I mean, and that full disclosure, I own Tesla stock. It's the only stock I own, and I will happily try to pump that. But to me, that just solidified it even more. I was like, yeah, no, this is the future. This is 100% the future. And I think the same thing's going to happen with commercial flight. It will be space flight. It'll be orbital or suborbital space flight, but it'll replace commercial flight. And if you can get the cost down, I mean, imagine just being able to fly. I mean, it would have as much as an effect on global travel. It would be to airlines what airlines were to cruise ships, right? Like affordable, citizens can get on it. Because I feel like the percentage jump in efficiency or speed, I don't even know how you'd rank that. A couple days for a transatlantic voyage versus a couple hours, right? That taking the highway from, getting in your Model T and going from New York to LA versus hopping on a Pan Am flight. I feel like that's the same jump. And I think that is what will push him into trillionaire status. And then, I don't know, Bezos, I mean, is it gonna be asteroid mining? Is that the next big one, right? You could almost say this will be like a new form of imperialism. We're going out and we're going to be grabbing these big chunks of land. Yeah, I mean, right? There's going to be like asteroid barons. They're going to go out, and what happens when you get a piece of palladium the size of, the Georgia Dome? Like, so, I think Bezos will definitely be a trillionaire. I don't know if Zuckerberg will. I think Zuckerberg's not, I don't really like him based on, all of my time hanging out with him. But you cannot deny that the man is a genius. You don't get to that point. Well, he didn't create Facebook. He stole it. To effectively steal Facebook from the people smart enough that did create it. He's not smart. He didn't build it. The real smart guys are the ones that built it. No, the real smart guy is the one that watched the smart guys build it and then was smart enough to take it from them. That's the real smart guy. You don't get to that level of being stupid. Jack Dorsey, I don't like him. You got to respect the intelligence. I mean, good Lord in heaven. So, but I think Musk will do it first. Yeah, I think Musk will do it first. And I think he's putting in all these pieces. He seems to be, look at it objectively. Just look at it as kind of like what I said in that solo rant about the United States occupying the Middle East. Don't look at it as the military-industrial complex. Don't look at it as the war on terror. Don't look at it as the U.S. hegemony. Don't look at it as imperialism. Don't look at it as a slaughter. Don't look at it as oil reserves. Look at it as the last one, oil reserves. Regardless of how you look at it, what is the objective reality? We are occupying all of the oil. You can call it this, you can call it that. We have oil and we have military right there, relatively close to China and Russia. Iran. That's what it is. So, if you just can zoom out and just sort of look at everything he's doing, remove language, remove your projections onto it about capitalism or socialism or good or left or right, good or bad, profits, whatever, just to look at it objectively. What is he doing? If you look at the world as a giant cell or even an organism, what are some of the main even in a cell, right? A cell, you have the proteins. You've seen the animated videos where it's like the proteins that marching up like the spindles and microtubules carrying like an ATP or a ADP or whatever. One big part is the thing that moves stuff around, the proteins, right, within the cell. Let's stick with cell. We might have to jump to an organism wide analogy, but we'll stick with cells. The proteins that move things around, right? The whole thing is in motion. You got gradients, sure. You got electrical gradients, sure. You have passive diffusion, active diffusion, different gates and shit, but the actual proteins moving things around, that's a big one. So what is he doing? He's getting in on the actual moving of things around. Does not matter what those things are. He's getting in and moving them around. Things with wheels. So sure, it's cars, right? Civilian sector, highways, commercial use. All right, got it. 18-wheelers, semi-trucks. All right, sure. Get into ATVs, bikes, buses. Sure, whatever. He's getting into those. Moving around. Are they moving goods? Are they moving carpools? It does not matter. They're moving things. They move. And they do it efficiently, and they do it luxuriously, and they're cutting edge, and they're sexy, and they pull you in just like a new iPhone. All right, so he's getting in on the movement of substances. That may have sounded wrong. I don't think he's a drug dealer. Maybe he is. He's getting in on infrastructure, the Boring Company. You could say, infrastructure. So he's getting in on the proteins that move things around, right? Things with wheels, Tesla. And he's also getting in on the actual like microtubules and spindles and chitin and whatever all the shit is that the proteins climb around on. Boring Company, right? Make more efficient paths. Boring Company. What's the other? Hyperloop, right? The actual infrastructure itself. Okay. He's getting in on, you could say, electrical diffusion, or because within a cell, maybe now we would have to kind of go to an organism wide. Look at neurons or nerves, right? He's getting into action potentials, impulses, dendrites and glia and astrocytes, right? He's getting into those with what? Is it Starlink? Satellites in space, right? Again, proteins moving things around. Tesla, wheels, big iPad, touchscreen, self-driving, sexy. Okay. Infrastructure itself, the chitin, the microtubules, the scaffolding on which everything moves around, right? Hyperloop, the Boring Company. All right. He's taking everything. So what I'm going back through is he takes it and then he evolves a step, right? Kind of like a Precambrian explosion. It's the tadpole, it's the fish climbing out onto the shore for the first time. It's the caveman picking up the stick to beat to death an animal. Bum bum, right? So movement, proteins, cars, and I know I go over things again and again and again and again if you can't tell by now. But that's how I learned. This is exactly how I would sit in my room like a psychopath for hours studying to get into medical school. Just talking out loud, just going through it again. So I'm not really presenting this for you so much as I'm talking out loud. Remember, this is a solo rant, so I'm making this up as I go. It's Tesla, things with wheels, moving around, independent vessels of movement that exist on the surface of the earth. Okay? And I would argue that atmosphere is surface. If we're looking at the rocky core, or the rocky just earth from the crust to the core, and then we're looking at space, I'm looking at whatever's in between as roughly surface. Sure, there's an atmosphere, and we perceive it as this infinite sky, but the reality is it's a tiny little coating of just, gas. Just, you could almost blow it off if you wanted to. So proteins on the surface of the medium, right? We're on the rock. Things that move around. Cars, semi-trucks, whatever. Okay, got it. Changing the medium itself. The infrastructure, Boring Company, Hyperloop. The action potentials, the impulses, the dendrites, the neurons, the glia, the astrocytes, the whatever. Starlink. So he's going up, and he's making it better. Tesla, sexy, it drives itself better than the old proteins, the Volvo and the Ford. Hyperloop, Boring Company, underground, super fast, better than the 405. Starlink, up there in space, beam it back any place on Earth, better than the dial-up or Comcast or whatever, right? So he's taking these pieces of the cell. I'm trying to remember, how could we fit that into a cellular analogy instead of organismal? Because I don't like that nonconformity. Man, I guess I've really forgot biology. Is it just action impulses? Action potentials, right? Because you have the nucleus, nucleolus, that's inside the... I guess it would just be like electrical gradients, right? Ions and stuff, right? Yeah, within the cell you could... Okay. Alright, well, yeah. To screw it, okay, I guess we could use an organism-wide level, right? You could say that the cars are like red blood cells or something. You could say that Hyperloop and the Boring Company, you could say those are veins in the lymphatic system, right? And I don't think that's really important, though, right? As I sit here in my UFO shirt yelling. Actually, I'm not yelling today. Thank you very much. Proteins, Hyperloop, Boring Company, neurons, Starlink up in orbit, right? You can't accidentally hit it with a wire when you're digging. Call 411 before you dig. He is also working on mitosis or meiosis or binary fission. Or isn't there another one? It's I think it begins with an A. I don't remember. But we're going to Mars, right? And again, he's doing it better than we did. We went up to the moon. We did a little bit of mitosis, right? The spindles started to spread apart. But then we came back in. We were like, no. Screw that. And you ran and you touched the scary tree. You run into the woods, you touch it. I went farther than you. We went out, we touched the moon, and we ran back and said, I did it farther than you. So he's doing mitosis, going to Mars, right? We're slowly cutting apart. And what do? You double all your genetic material, you double everything you need for the organelles, you get ready for this process, right? I would probably argue that he's probably going to try to make like a copy of the Svalbard seed vault, right? There's probably going to be genetic samples, probably some... Aren't they finding that they've like made hard drives made out of like glass or crystal or something, and they can like engrave like the Bible on the head of a pin, and its decay is only, it's something like, it's like one error per 10,000 years or something. I'm sure they're just gonna have a gang of just like quartz hard drives, no moving pieces, but like micro etching, like nano etching. Probably like the Library of Congress or all of Wikipedia or whatever, right? Just throw them onto Mars, bury them somewhere. Same with the genetic samples, which I think we should be doing. I think we should be putting things in decaying orbit. I think we should put them up in a space with decaying orbit. Copies of, a much smaller version of the Svalbard seed vault. It's... micro etching of all like the world's data. I think we should put those into decaying orbits. We should put up like, maybe that's what he's doing with Starlink. Is you'd put them up and you'd put them in concentric circles going outwards to where the decay was every year. It would fall back down, and you'd want to have a heat shield on it so it survived. And then it would be like a dead man switch. You could you could turn on the thruster and give it some speed so it goes back out into space and doesn't decay. And the only time it would ever decay would be if there was no one back home controlling it, and thus there was a global disaster or apocalypse or whatever. And you could do it every year, and you could even have them. I talked about this with an author once on here. He and I were just shooting the shit and thought it would be a cool idea for a book. But that's what you do, is you'd set it up so they fell every year and they fell in different spots. So it's just kind of shotgun approach. And it would be, yeah. So you'd have it fall every year. Genetic material, schematics. Yeah, you'd want to put in all the, I mean, and I'm talking like not just like, oh, put in, Led Zeppelin's discography. No, I mean like you'd want to put in all the stuff that took a long time to figure out, like PV equals nRT, 1/2 AT squared, or F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration, or like Newton's laws. You'd want to put up some constants, right? C, E. You'd want to, yeah, the nuclear force, or the four major forces, like the general structure of things. Research into different chemicals, like things that took a long time to figure out. And that can be relearned, but why do that when you can just put, like, math, just some, like, proofs. All right? A map of the world. I mean, I'm talking catastrophe, talking Younger Dryas, 12,500 years, or whenever it was, 11,800 or 12,600. Something like that, and you put them up there. And so let's say there is a catastrophe. Basically what it'd be is like if everyone on Earth disappeared right now, and there's just a couple of you. And man, I really need to lose some weight. I can see my double chin. It's gross. Me. But that's not why you're here. You're not here to talk about my body image. We're here to talk about Elon Musk. You'll know I moved out when I start losing a lot of weight, because I can just go full psycho and buy whatever weird shit I want to buy and diet like a crazy person like I used to in college. That's incoming. That's going to be great. I can't wait to get that back to that point. I wish I didn't care as much as I do, but I do. So I'm just going to indulge it. But Starlink satellites, you'd have these satellites, and you'd have them decaying every year, and they'd be coming in, streaking across the sky. You'd want them landing everywhere, right? You'd want them landing on every continent. Because this isn't like a national security thing. Like, are we sure we want our nuclear secrets going to the Chinese? No, this is an extinction level event. Not nuclear war where we do have a relocation arc, where we do have bunkers, Site R, Raven Rock, Mount Weather, Greenbrier, NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain, blah, 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 blah. None of that. I mean, I'm talking like the bottleneck event where like a volcano exploded and only 10,000 Homo sapiens were alive at one point. I mean, something like that. Everything is lost. There's no national security. Right now we're trying to find like knives, because those could really change our tribe. So you'd be having them dropped everywhere. Middle East, China, I mean, the main island. Yeah, you want Australia, South America, North America. And you want them right dead smack in the center, so that they can have a wide margin of error of, something messing up the orbit. And you'd want them crashing in multiple places, like once a year or something. Right? Yeah, you probably want them in multiple places once a year. I would argue in the same spot. And it wouldn't be progressing technology. It would be the same thing. So, I mean, at the very least, I mean, this would almost turn into like a religious thing, right? There'd be these shooting stars, and it happened on the same day that's how you could do it, actually, right? You would do it on the same day every year. So at the very least, it would become like a religion or something, whatever day this year, even if they don't have a Gregorian calendar, you could say it's Christmas or something, right? Or maybe do it on like one of the solstices, right? You would have them crash, and you'd have them crash in the same spot. So people would go there, they discover it, maybe they set up a village, and then maybe next year it comes right back down and hits them all and destroys and kills everybody. But even then, that serves the point in that it will bring attention. People will be like, oh man, they got smited, and they'd go there. Eventually they'd learn to like back off around the solstice, right? But it would become something as like patterned and as regular as like a meteor shower. But it would be coming to Earth. you want to have some sort of like mechanism to reduce its speed, because you don't want it coming down and having a kinetic strike and then killing anyone that gets near it. And then maybe the people that were near it and recovered it and actually start to slowly understand it, those are now your cream of the crop of the remaining Homo sapiens. What you don't want to do is execute them all every year, because then you're starting back at zero, right? That's like the main difference between like us and monkeys, is like the real thing is like every generation they hit reset, they start a new game, because none of like their experiences were passed down. Whereas we write things down, we build on each other. That simple thing is why I can sit here in a chair in a heated room with a light and a camera and a microphone. Is because we pass it on. We do a new game. We do a new game plus every day. It's like a speed runner. We're getting better and better and better at it. We get to keep all our weapon loadouts from the game before, right? So you wouldn't want to kill everyone there, because that would, yeah. But either way, it wouldn't matter, because eventually the drops would stop. Maybe it would take 10,000 years, but eventually, in geologic time, that's nothing. They would eventually stop, and people would, discover the materials, and you could even send down material examples, maybe like alloys, examples of metallurgy, of rocket fuels, of yeah, and yeah, that's what you would do. And it would be external hard drives that fall from the sky. And the only way they don't fall from the sky is if you actively turn on a booster, so they go back up and they stay in their orbit. But you'd want them set as decaying orbits. And yeah, you just make like 10,000 rings, right? Maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Um, but yeah, you could even say though, right? That's mitosis. That's a doubling of genetic material. Or what it is genetic material is the material you need to obviously duplicate the organism, the organelle, the cell, whatever. But what it is we're duplicating Earth being the cell. So it's not limited to all the base pairs and amino acids and how to make a sarcoplasmic reticulum, but also how to smelt iron, how to send radio, how to, you know, whatever, antibiotics, how to rotate crops. Like, I mean, really basic things. Yeah, problems with inbreeding. Um, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing, right? It almost seems like we're kind of doubling the genetic material, and then I think there's something more to Starlink. I just don't see someone like Elon. Like, we're gonna take. How are we gonna get to? How are we gonna build a Mars civilization? We're gonna fight the FAA. It's like, what the hell? But like, that's what it is. Is like, when he sees so far ahead. If you're one step ahead, people think you're brilliant. If you're 2 steps ahead, they think you're mad. If you're 3 steps ahead, they think you're the Antichrist. So that's what I think it is so when he says things like, we need to take on the FAA and that's how we're going to get to Mars, I think what that leads to is, I think that's how you get so far ahead that things start to seem crazy when you say them. So I mean, look at the Boring Company. On face value, does that seem like an Elon Musk thing to build tunnels under LA? Does that really seem like something that's what that guy's setting out to do? I mean, come on, he's hitting like two primary things: environmental damage using, and you could argue that batteries are more damaging, but whatever. Let's say he's virtue signaling just for getting that paper, whatever. Electrical vehicles, if anything, energy independence, regardless of effect on climate. You would just say independent of the Middle East. Maybe he sees the troops as occupying there, and he's like, let's negate the need for it, right? Legalize drugs. That's how you get rid of the cartels, is you rip out the very desire for, or the market for them to produce these things. It seems like, right, and what's the right, self-landing rockets, space travel, the final frontier, make man a multiplanetary species. Neuralink, right? It's the next big step. Neuralink is, I mean, there hasn't been something like this since, I would say, language. or writing, right? A new game plus every day. For everyone that doesn't play a video game, you don't need to play a video game to know what a new game is, right? You start a new game, the thing is reset. A new game plus is when you get to keep everything that you gained in your previous play. So let's say you unlocked all the, you maxed out all your attributes: aiming, driving, flying, stamina, strength, stealth, whatever, charisma. You start a new game and you get to play with everything, right? It's like if you're a really rich guy and you have like an Ivy League education, and then you had a kid, and this is a fucking weird example. Somehow you inhabited that kid. You would get to keep everything. I know, yes, you could say like that's right. The rich grow richer. You could say that the child is growing up with like perfect nutrition, no violence, no trauma, no stress, education, a bohemian lifestyle, right? I don't think that's the right word, bohemian lifestyle. That's what a new game plus is you get to keep everything, right? It's you get to but that's not even a good example because it still has to learn. New game plus, you know everything. You get to play again, right? New game plus is like if you got to go back to when you were 5 with full memory of how the next 25 years played out. So that'd be like if I went back to 1995 knowing full well like what Amazon is, what the dot-com bubble is, 9/11, defense contractors, betting on presidential elections. Shit, I would. But right? Yeah. Where am I going with this? New game plus. Fuck. Oh yeah. So new game plus, speaking, right? I'd say the last big one. I mean, you could say the printing press, but that's more of mass marketing or mass media duplication of it. The actual ability to do a new game plus would be speaking, or not. Would it be language or would it be writing? I think it would be language first, right? It'd be language, oral tradition. That's what she said. Friday night is what I call oral tradition. Hey, thanks guys. Subscribe to my Instagram, Friday Life. It would be language, written word. Right, it would be like cuneiform. But before that, it would be language. And then, I guess you could say pictograms, maybe. Maybe like paintings. It'd probably be language, right? It would be simple grunts and stuff. Yeah. I wouldn't even say printing press. Printing press is huge, but I'm looking at even more paradigm shifting things. So I think it's writing. Before that, I think it's language. Before that, I think it's opposable thumbs. No, agricultural revolution, writing, moving backwards from here. Agricultural revolution, writing, spoken word, yeah, so I'm not even going into like the wheel and fire. I mean, truly everything shifts. Agricultural revolution, we no longer have to run around hunting every day. We can put shit aside and start pondering things like, how come I don't have a bigger car? Agricultural revolution, writing, spoken word, opposable thumbs. I don't even know what before that would be. I mean, like air breathers. So it's yeah, looking at it now, you can start to see that it's not linear, it's logarithmic, right? If you played it in reverse, it makes sense, right? It takes how many hundreds of millions of years, right, to go from single cell to multi-cell, and then from multi-cell to like full-fledged organism. Leave water, go to land, right? All the bacteria, the change in foliage, oxygen content, right? You would say, I mean, literally walking around on the land. I guess this is back to right? Because going from binary fission to genetic recombination, right? Increasing your ability to, diversify. Genetic recombination is the original diversify your portfolio. That is the original Charles Schwab, is mitosis. That's the original. They should file, our cells should file a copyright. I wonder if with single cell organisms, if there are like terror cells, like little cells wearing like little burqas. I'm not even sorry, that was bad, but that was cheesy. Not bad and like politically incorrect. I mean, it was just cheesy. Right? You'd go single cell, multi-cell, multi-cell to organism, and I believe each subsequent gap is shorter, right? You wouldn't even go from, I mean, before that. I mean, shit, let's just start with the universe, right? Universe, formation, original, like most annihilation of matter, antimatter. I was being serious. Let's go back. You'd have the rapid cooling down. Well, actually, it's weird, though, because it's not just these huge steps. Because the beginning of the universe, a lot of things happened. If you look at the stages of how the universe formed, it's written in like what happened in the first 10 to the negative 61 seconds. And then you can go in and read chapters and chapters about like everything that changed. And you're like, wow. I mean, it feels like you're reading about the Iron Age and like, you know, the Inquisition and like, like heavier than air flight. But the reality is it's like in the next chapter is like 10 to the negative 55 seconds. And you're like, wait, what? It was just what? It was just, but that's how it's broken up. And then it's like 10 to the negative 30, 10 to the negative 20, 10 to the negative 5. So even that, yeah, actually, no, you could say that it's speeding up more and more and more. But then all of a sudden it jumps back out to like the billions of years, right? Hydrogen coming together and forming the first generation of stars. Supernova seeding the universe with heavier elements, allowing, right? I'm going to be butchering my astronomy. And then there's like the second generation of stars, right? And then you have, well, before that, you'd have gravity sucking everything in, right? The four forces: gravity, electrostatic, electromagnetic, weak nuclear, strong nuclear, right? Forming stars. Stars would be then collapsing, protoplanetary disks, those all forming into almost the same process, like mini stars. But really what it is it's a coalescing of matter. In the center, it just gets big enough that it turns into lights, but the rest don't. They're almost like little failed stars, the Earth. But it's just a coalescing of these things together, right? Then you have, like, at least for us, we have the Great Bombardment Period or the Heavy Bombardment Period or whatever it was called. Yeah, and then those turn into planets moving around, shifting of, and then you have the big planets kind of suck up the other stuff, right? Jupiter, Mars, asteroid belt, right? And Joe Rogan, thank you, Jupiter, right? That's, by the way, that's my slippers, not me farting. Not that I'm embarrassed of farting. I will fart in your face, from the head. Protoplanetary disks forming these, heavy bombardment, late bombardment, and then you'd have, right? Then you have that primordial cauldron, right? Thick oceans, right? You have Pangea. You probably still, I don't know this correctly, but I would imagine, right? You still have things shifting around, continents, probably a more relatively, what word am I looking for? Pliable crust of the earth or mantle or whatever. I would think that Pangea originally was probably moving around quicker, right? I wonder if the movement of continents is slowing down. Already, I mean, it's imperceptible, but I wonder if it's actually slowing down. First, and then, like, how did life begin? Did life begin with panspermia, or is it the idea that if you put like enough amino acids in one spot and then hit it with lightning, somehow it turns into this self-replicating thing that never dies? But then even that is like, well, why does it do that? Is it just a pattern? Is it just like a perpetual motion device? Did we just somehow create this, like, it seems like that's what life is. It's not a thing, it's a pattern. It's a pattern of, it's like rolling a ball down a hill and it gets like a snowball gets bigger and bigger. It's just like we like, in a way, life kind of seems like nuclear fusion. Like if you do it right, it will stay there and sustain itself. And it's like we just like twisted it, like we did the right thing, right? We pushed together the matter and made the nuclear bomb, or the sustained, what, magneto-hydrodynamic, whatever, the toroids that they use to hold the, well, they can't do it yet. Well, they kind of do it, but shout out Justin Ball and Jason Parisi, who are on this podcast. So that just, well, regardless of where it came from, panspermia or amino acids being hit with lightning in the right area, kind of like a Manhattan Project by chance, right? 10,000 monkeys giving typewriters to make Shakespeare. But, and then so single cell, multi-cell, and then full-fledged organisms. I don't know where you draw the line on what is multi-cell and what is an organism. Coming onto land, right, you'd have obviously trees, bacteria in the water, the changing of the atmosphere, more oxygen content, right? And then the first were the dinosaurs, right? Yeah. So you create dinosaurs. I need to really watch like a history of all of this so I can get a better understanding. I did read Bill Bryson's History of Everything, but clearly I don't remember it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to go with. I really gotta pee, so I'll be right back. And there's nobody here, so you hold tight, you. Okay, so single cell, multi-cell, going on to land, increasing the oxygen content of the atmosphere. I'll put my jacket back on. And then, I mean, really, is there any other big thing that happens until opposable thumbs? I mean, I'm sure there is somewhere. Maybe warm-blooded and cold-blooded. I would think. All right, male, female. I would think the next big one would be opposable thumbs. And that's the thing, is there are these huge gaps in the progress. But that do seem to get smaller and smaller and smaller, or quicker and quicker and quicker between subsequent generations of change. So you would say opposable thumb. I wonder if walking upright. Actually, I'm sure that's a huge one. If I actually understood what I was talking about, I'm sure that's actually a huge one, walking upright. Then it would be opposable thumbs. I wonder which came first, though. I would think opposable thumbs came first, right? Like monkey swinging branch to branch versus walking upright. I would say that like packs and tribes seems like they always existed, right? That's probably something I'm overlooking. Coming together in a community, for better or worse. Maybe it's just a school of fish or whatever, but right, bigger numbers. Opposable thumbs, standing up straight. Yeah, the next would be, it would be language, right? Yeah, right. It would have to be, or no, the creation of tools. Using, so kind of amplifying, augmenting your, right, an augmentation force amplifier. Yeah, so a rock, just anything sharp, a spear, a club, whatever. Right, you get that 2001: A Space Odyssey moment. I wonder if speaking came before that. I was gonna say I could just look it up, but then who actually knows? Like we can, like no one actually knows. This isn't like a fossil record. Like no one actually knows. Like there could have actually absolutely been probably pockets of language that existed and died and no one will ever know about because they weren't written down and they weren't passed down through oral tradition. There might have been languages, right? It's like two people inventing something or discovering something on opposite sides of the world, not in contact with each other. So whatever. So tools, language, writing, agriculture, and then really it was that for a while, right? Would the wheel? I feel like wheel falls into tool because I mean, if we're really looking at, again, we're not looking at things like the first computer. No, no, I mean like what we're saying, like the true paradigm shifting, single cell, multi cell, coming onto land, thumbs, yeah, like truly revolutionary steps. It would be agriculture. I think you would say the wheel is still a tool, no different than a spear or a till or whatever, a knife. And then a lot of things I still would say fall under tools. I mean, building a shelter, that's agricultural revolution, right? Building one as opposed to just a cave. I would still say that's within agricultural revolution. A wheel, I would say, is a tool. Armor, I would say Iron Age, whatever. I would say that that's still a tool. I mean, no, I'm trying to think. Hunting, no, that's still in there. Or societal organization, I would still say no. Like we gotta go deeper. It's the big one is agriculture. Whatever happens within that is whatever. Whatever happens within your settled town doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's a settled town. Like physically, you no longer need to go out and find things to eat, so to take in calories and protein and fat and carbs and nutrients. Like you have the actual fuel, right? Like mind over matter only works so long. You can be the most hardened Delta Force or SEAL guy, but ultimately, if you do run out of food and water, you do not have the actual energy to move the physical gears of your body. It doesn't matter how strong your mind is. If there is no way for you to, doesn't matter how determined you are. If your car is out of gas, you can push it, but you're not driving the car around. You know what I mean? So agriculture. I would say like riding horses and shit. I would say that's still a tool. The wheel, pulling the cart, I would still say is a tool. I think writing happened after agriculture, actually, right? Because they kept records. So like that is, yeah, we've touched on that though. Thumb, speaking, writing, agriculture. I wouldn't even say building like boats or ships or canoes. I wouldn't even call that one. I'd say those still fall under tools. Religion doesn't. I would still say that's, or possibly truly looking beyond the horizon. I don't know where you would put that. So, or no, writing would probably allow. Would probably no. It would probably fall under writing, right? It would be ability to look ahead, not just where am I getting. Because it's kind of the same thing, right? We go from looking for the next meal to we have agriculture. It's kind of that same jump again. Go from agriculture to, well, hey, what comes next? What happens when we discover what's on that side of the mountain? Like, should we prepare for that? What is after that? You could maybe tie in religion to that and be like, we're looking at the ultimate horizon, what's beyond this world, right? Who knows? But even that, I would say religion falls under societal organization, culture. Um, and then after, yeah, so it doesn't, even pyramids and stuff, like, great, but still, that's just movement of stuff around. Not to belittle the pyramids, but you know what I mean. I would say the next big one would, right? That'd have to be the printing press. That'd have to be Gutenberg. Yeah, but it almost seems like now we have to sort of grab lower hanging fruit because there aren't as many impressive monumental changes, right? If you really wanted to go back, you could say the development of hair, the development of the senses, using a nose in conjunction with your ears. But if we're sticking with just the giant ones, single cell, multi-cell, come onto land, thumbs, stand up straight, speaking, writing, agriculture. I think Gutenberg's huge. I don't think it's up there with it though. True, that is a paradigm changer, but that's not this like change in ability, an opposable thumb. It's not just that we figured out a new way to use our thumb. We got a new appendage. It almost allowed for a dimensional change in our interaction with the world. Right? Speaking and writing, that again, a dimensional change. We now moved into the fourth dimension, moving through time, down the halls of eternity, of where, hey, don't do this because my grandpa did that. And then his grandson says it's the new game plus. And I think as huge as writing is, I don't think it's one of those, because that's just an amplification of an existing technology. Flight, hot air balloon or Wright brothers, still huge. I would still say that's just a tool, though. It is. We're still on that same plane, no pun intended, but we're still on that same plane of movement, of using materials to harness energies to move around, be it a sail, be it an internal combustion engine, be it being pulled by oxes or what? Oxen, 2 boxing of donuts, Brian Reagan. It's this whole. I wouldn't say that Gutenberg's one. I wouldn't say that. What I'm looking at are like books in a series, like Harry Potter 1 through 7. Those things like Gutenberg's, those are all chapters. Like, they're still huge. Scales, losing tails, like the tongue, the ability to digest the different things. Those are all still huge, but they're chapters. I'm looking at like the jump from like a home phone to an iPhone. That's like half of the ink used in a comma. So those things are still big as chapters, but I'm looking at like books. I think the last big one was agriculture. True core change. I would say germ theory is a chapter, not a new book. Because we lived longer, but it's not like we went from not living to living. We just, antibiotics, like, sure, you went from having 10 kids and 9 died to you could keep 9 and 1 died. But that still seems like it's a linear change. That's not this exponential kick. So obviously there's still chapters. Gutenberg, ships of the line, fire, weapons, using ore, mathematics, science, scientific method. I would say that's one, because that's a method in which to learn all of those subsequent chapters. Gutenberg, flight, fire, germ theory, whatever, is it's not studying something. It's when you learn how to study, and then you can go study literature, or calculus, or biochem, or accounting. But first you have to learn, right? You have to learn how to study. Or even before that, you would say reading. So I would say the scientific method is one, up there with agriculture, because it's a tried and true, it's a proven method in which to sort of scan reality, right? It's a metal detector. That doesn't mean you found a metal ore, but that does mean you now have the ability to look at rocks or mud or a swamp or hay or timber and find metal within it. The scientific method, it's kind of like a thermal radar. Doesn't mean you found the goods, but you can now look at anything and find the goods. So yeah, I would say scientific method, because all those came from it, right? All science comes from it, or your ability to do science. You can have great apps, right? You can have great, you know, you know, what am I looking for? A Waze, Waze, a Parlor, a Gab, a Cloud Hub. I mean, online banking, Snapchat. You can have those, but they all have to exist within a user, a touchscreen phone. So it's like those are all held within this. You can have a new great groundbreaking game, but it exists on an Xbox, a PlayStation, a gaming PC, right? So they exist within it. So, yeah, I would say scientific method. And then Gutenberg, I would say, is under that. Ships the line, under that. Smelting, melting, under that. All mathematics, all medicine, germ theory, I would say under that. Even things like ending slavery or women's rights, I would still say are under that. Heavier than air flight, still under that. Now, something like a Pony Express mailing, right? It's your early messaging system. Those are your primitive neurons. But I'm thinking, I wonder if you could argue that like radio, like radio or phone or telegraph. I wonder if you could argue that that is one, because it's instantaneous, or speed of light goes around the circumference of the world 7.5 times a second. It's instantaneous communication, right? No, but even that, it's no, that because that falls under the umbrella of communication, period. Speaking and writing. Gutenberg, you can do it more, you can do it, spread it out more. That still falls under that umbrella. Communication, instantaneously, to where I can now effectively talk to someone on the horizon, and thus you could say that we can now effectively act as a single unit. We're not an organism that is 100 miles wide like some, Lovecraftian monster, but if we can communicate in real time, then we essentially do have that, like bright pincer movements. But to stick with this concept of not chapters but books, I would say no. That still falls with under. I mean, I guess you could argue scientific method would fall under speaking and writing. Maybe it does. Maybe that one's still up in the air. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Drop it down in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Don't like, don't share, don't subscribe. As a matter of fact, delete your YouTube account. Never watch this podcast again. Actively go out and tell people not to watch this. This guy has to be stopped. Fuck Tommy. Do not like, do not share, do not subscribe. We need to end this. This man cannot be allowed to go on. I want there to be an anti-Tommy league, like the Anti-Defamation League. But yeah, no, but really, do comment about scientific method. Do you think that's one of these? Do you think that's a book or a chapter? Because if we're going to say instantaneous communication, like telegraph, whatever, Morse code, no, because then where do you draw the line, right? Because smoke signals is you're not waiting for the letter to get there with a messenger. It's still, where do you draw the hard line, though? I don't think there is one. I think it's a gray area. And because there's a gray area at all, I don't think it can be considered as a book, but rather a chapter. Because a new book is not a gray area. It's a thumb. It's walking out of water onto land. It's right. It's writing and speaking. It's that form of communication, which Terence McKenna argued is telepathy. And I'll butcher the quote, but yeah, look it up. I don't want to butcher it because that would do a disservice to that man's linguistic abilities. Yeah, I don't know. I think we'd have to say scientific method, right? No, because that's still a form of just communication. So I take it back. No, I think that's a chapter, not a book. And because of that, I think we have to say things like even like live video conferencing, radio, TV, still all under communication, an expedited and wildly facilitated and increasingly complicated mode of communication, but communication nonetheless. It's communication from being A to being B, whether it's me writing it down. Well, no, it's not just communication because we can communicate in real time. Actually, I would say those are two separate things then. And I would say those are both books, not chapters. Communicating in real time, even if it's grunts, oof, that. And then writing or oral tradition, I would say that they're not separate. Because you could have writing and oral tradition going to, no, because writing still goes down through the ages. So it'd be, originally there would just be speaking, and that would be one book. Another book would be oral tradition and writing, and I don't think you can separate the two because those are still what they are. It's a shift from 3 dimensions to 4 dimensions. Whether or not one is written on stone and the other is an oral tradition that can die if everyone of the tribe gets eaten, that story dies. But what it is it's a transmission of data across a 4th dimension at time. Not you say it to Oog over on that side of the field, but rather you say it to Oog's grandchild. And not in person. Your story goes on to him, right? It's reading Shakespeare. Like no one told me Shakespeare. Like I can get his words. So yeah, I would say speaking in real time, right? Speaking in real time was almost like the original Snapchat. Like it's deleted. And oral tradition and writing would be like, I don't know, texting. You can go back and look at them, right? You can go back and look at this Facebook post from this day. So the last big one would be agriculture. I don't think we have had we've had big ones. We've had big chapters. I don't think we've had new books. Scientific method, Gutenberg, flight, antibiotics, germ theory, civil rights. Yeah, I don't think we've had a big one since then. So I would say there are 2 big ones coming. It's very exciting because, like I said, I think the last one was the agricultural revolution. There are 2 big ones coming, and one of them could be argued that it's not one. So I'll go with that one first, and I will say multiplanetary species. Now, I think it is. On one hand, I think it is a new one. I think it's a new book. In that we truly have a backup. We are on a different place. This one can get hit with an asteroid, a game ender, right? I don't know how wide. I mean, they're relatively narrow in comparison to like the size of a star, but like a gamma ray burst, those are one, like it's like a beam, it's a line. I don't know how wide that beam in a line is. It seems like they're pencil thin, but I don't know if pencil thin like encompasses a whole solar system. But whatever, whatever. We have a backup on a different planet. On one hand, I say it is a new book because, right, you can go to a new continent, but this one world is still subject to a Krakatoa, right? It's still subject to Yucatan Peninsula, Younger Dryas, or just rising ocean levels, right? Greenhouse gas effect, runaway effect, climate change. So on one hand, I say that is a new one, but on the other hand, is that any different than just, is that not still another tool? It's traveling really far away, but traveling. Sure, you escape all of the potential one and done game enders on Earth, but what about what about if the sun explodes? Like, have you really escaped that? So is that a gray area or not? I would, it's a hard one to argue. I would say it is ish, right? It's mitosis. It's splitting of the planet, duplicating. Oh, you know what? No, it has to be. Because if we're going to say single-celled organisms were one, and how did they reproduce, right? Binary fission, splitting. Then have we come full circle? Are we just splitting? Possibly. Or is it just no different than flight? Is it no different than using oxen? Is it no different than harnessing the wind with a ship of the line? We're just, instead of going over the horizon to a new world on the edge of the flat Earth, in a way, we're still going to the new horizon, right? We're going beyond. You can't see it with your naked eye. You can't see more. You kind of can. I would say it is, but it's weird because I think it could be argued it's like it's super fluid, right? Or it's like superposition. Is it still, or is it, you know? It's hard. It's like technically there are more than two genders, but it's not because you're a cis foxkin, which is fine if that's what you are. I don't care. But looking at biologically, there are actually a lot. There's like 20, I think. There are all these like Klinefelters is the one I think most people know. That's the one I remember. But there are a lot. There's even more obscure and minor ones. But is going to a new planet one? I don't know. I think it's so. I think so. Yeah, I would say it is, because this biosphere, we are now not subject to being deleted, right? We didn't just save, we saved as, and we put it on an external. That is because you can make 2 copies of a file on your computer, but if the computer goes down, you can make 1,000 copies, but if the computer goes down, you're done. Once you make it 2 separate entities, I would say it is, and I would say that's a first. The point of this, of that whole, not the whole solar ramp, but the whole paradigm shifting, I would say, let's say you argue that going to Mars isn't one. I would say, so whatever, let's take that and I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you. It's not one. It's no different than using a biplane or an ox or whatever. Just the same argument earlier. Scientific method is not one. Gutenberg is not one. Those are chapters, not books. What I would say is a book is Neuralink, because that, like the opposable thumb, or right, the opposable thumb changes our interaction with this dimension. Just like writing and or oral tradition, it's a jump in dimensions. I think that we are going into a new dimension of merging with our technology. And I don't know what dimension that is. But it's not just he's smarter because his parents were rich and he could get a tutor, or that guy had access to Adderall and that guy didn't. This seems like it's like an opposable thumb, but just to the as it explaining the importance of writing and language would be a futile point to try to explain it to a monkey because they don't have it. They can't understand it. We're looking at Neuralink, and we're looking at an event horizon. We don't know what's beyond it, right? Do our problems, right? How are blimps going to get bigger, or how are airships going to get bigger to carry people? We'd run out of material in the world, and it's like, well, no, we're gonna create a flyer called the Wright Flyer. How can you fly to the moon? You would need an even bigger. You need all the canvas in the land, and it's like, well, no, we're gonna have a solid fueled rocket or a liquid fueled rocket. I think that's what it is. It's because I don't know what is there. Are we going to get to that? And is our worry going to be, well, now everyone knows what porn I'm watching, but it might be a change in consciousness that negates your concern for porn, and it might also negate your desire for it. It might not only negate embarrassment because you're on such a higher level of, just new dimensions of problems and evolution, that I don't think we're going to be using that new thing to solve our things now. I don't think we're going to turn it on and be like, oh, now we can use this Neuralink to find out how to really game the stock market. Like, I think we'll get into that zone, and the stock market will be, it won't matter, right? It'll be a family crest. It will be, I have the king's approval. Like, it will just be gone. Right? I'm going to get all the money in the world so I can be taller. And it's like, no, you don't need to be taller and better looking. You have money. That is the new genetic trait, right? That's what I think it is. So I think Elon's behind that. So whereas I think asteroid mining is a new chapter, a big one, but a new chapter nonetheless, I think Neuralink is a new book. And I don't know what that book will be. I think that will momentarily make him the richest man in the world. But I think I would argue it's going to be bigger than Bezos becoming a trillionaire, because I think it'll put us into a realm where maybe like money isn't a thing. Like, this might be an old idea of like credit points. Like, that's what I think it will be. Like, are we moving on to this thing where you don't need money to control land and resources? Are we moving into this cyber realm that's, you can power it off the sun or any star, and thus you have it doesn't matter if crops die. Crops are of nothing to you. I think that's what it's going to be. So I think it's going to be a new. So he will be the richest man in the world, but that will quickly become a worthless value. So yeah, I mean, that's getting the high score versus getting a score so high the game dissolves and it can't be played anymore, or it won't be played anymore. That's what I think it is he's going to go into the next. Yeah, and it won't even be something we can comprehend. The idea of like a multiplanetary species will seem like as silly to us as like, a harem of wives. Like, I have more land than you. I have more, horse riding soldiers than you. And it's like, I have more tanks than you. It's like, do we have atomic bombs? It's a different level. Yeah, it's going to be something you didn't expect. And I think that's why he will be temporarily the richest man in the world. Right? If you become the best basketball player in all of high school basketball, you're only the best for a short time, because then you go pro. You don't go to college, or whatever. You go to college, you get your number one pick, or you go pro. You get LeBron, Kobe, rest in peace, Kobe. It's this weird caveat where it's like, you're the best, but then being the best makes you go away, right? It's like the weird caveat of like you can only become awake in the Buddhist sense once there is no one to be awake. Like you can't lose yourself. The ego can't experience ego death. It doesn't. It's a weird one. I would like to see. I would like to see Elon take on. I would like to see him take on big tech in terms of making a phone or just a whole line, you know, MacBooks and laptops and desktops and phones and tablets. I would love to see him do that. And I would love to see him create social networks. Facebooks, Twitters, Instagrams, YouTubes. God, Elon, I wish you would. God, I wish you would. Just make them all, host them on, or maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe that's that limited thinking. It's the good app, but it doesn't matter how good your app is. It's like who controls the app store, who controls the software on which it is used, or the hardware, the phone. And maybe he's looking at it as is like he's going to be on Starlink, and you can be hosted on there. You know, you're not going to be shut off by Amazon Web Services or. That's another thing is I've already been tempted to because I need some stuff for the podcast. I will never shop at Amazon again. Shutting down Parlor, I will never do that. And that's the thing is I don't think I'm going to buy a new MacBook. I don't think I'm going to buy anything Apple, which really sucks because I like it. But I don't think I'm going to. I think I might have to become a normie, but I don't think I can. I don't think. And this is a side note. But Tom, they're a private company. How right you are. And I've said on this podcast, and I've said it months past, as much as I disagree with what they're doing, I think that they are a private company and that they are allowed to do it. I truly do. And I still stand by that. However, how weird it was when there's that astroturfed movement at the top of every subreddit and every social media web or platform in 2017 about net neutrality and about private companies being able to throttle your access to information depending on your or their political beliefs, and how evil that was. And they were not private companies. They were fascist technocratic dictators. How quickly it changes when now they're private companies and they're allowed to do whatever they want. But what does making that point do? You know, do I get to sit on my high horse for 10 seconds? What actual effect does it have? It doesn't. I don't think it has any. Shout out to Kyril, to AJ, and to Garrett for being Patreons. We're at $26 a month. I won't ask for you to like, share, and subscribe, but I will ask for you to get on the Patreon. And as this grows, so we can sidestep Apple, we can sidestep Amazon, and go buy a computer that does something else. Help me fund that. Help me fight these assholes. I put all of my money back into this podcast. I'm not spending it on anything other than all of this stuff. You can't see all of it, but there's a lot of stuff now. That's what I would say. Honestly, I wouldn't even say like, share, and subscribe. What I would say is go watch on Rumble or BitChute. That's what I would say. Because I don't want to build up this kingdom here that is built on a sinking island. It's YouTube. It's done. The thing is shit. That's the reality of it. Is once you start astroturfing and trying to put your own message on it, it turns to shit. Yeah. But shout out to those three guys or girls, AJ, Garrett, and Kyril, for being Patreons. $26 a month. And it's been going on for like, well, they've been adding up, but I think it's only been going on for like 2 or 3 months. It's probably at like maybe like, but it hasn't been 26 for 3 months. It's been at 26 this month. I think last month it was at like 13, and before that I think it was at like 9. So yeah, if anyone donates, it will, you have my word. I will screen record when I transfer it to my bank, and then I will screen record the number. I'll blot out my account numbers, and I'll put it on a new. It'll be a desktop. This is a MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019, September 2019. It's still awesome, which is a shame because I like Apple, but I cannot support that. So they are free companies, and they are free to do that, and I'm with you 100%. And as such, I am a private consumer, and I will not, because I don't respect it. So yeah, but yeah, I have not cashed out the Patreon nor Anchor. I think I've made like $20 on Anchor now over almost a year. So it's getting pretty serious. But yeah, if we can get it going, because my friend does build computers. He's very well versed in it. It's what he does for a living. I could get him to, yeah, I mean, shit. I really like Apple, but you know what? If I have to go build some normie PC on my own, then that's what I'll do, because I cannot stand by Apple. Despite how cool their M1 chip is, I do not respect it, and I can't respect it. And I'm lying if I say that I do respect it. So, sucks to suck. But yeah. So, yeah. Patreon, and we will get a ball and computer. If I get a ball and computer, it's going to be ball, and I'm not going to put one nut in this. We're going to go all in. So I would say let's put together $10,000, and not even 10,000 for Apple bucks, but a $10,000 custom machine, some water cooled sexy bitch. It's fucking like a petabyte of storage. Yeah, like a couple terabytes of RAM. I don't even know what I would need it for, and I don't care. I want it. Some terabit Ethernet, a couple 8K cameras. I want this thing filmed in 240 FPS. I want you to be able to watch it in slow motion if you want. I want the equivalent of the highest fidelity audio. I want the audio file. Standard definition audio file for a 2-hour podcast is like 80 megabytes. HD audio file is like maybe like 200 megabytes. I don't think I've ever had an episode bigger than that, because you can't upload bigger than 300 megabytes on Anchor. So I think the biggest audio file I've ever had is like 300, and that was like 4.5 hours. I want the audio file to be gigabytes. I want the highest fidelity quality. I want you to be able to break that audio quality down and listen to my stomach grumbling, isolate the grumbles, and tell me exactly what is wrong with the pyloric acid levels in my gut. That's what I want. Why? Fuck you. That's why. We need to push this thing forward. I want this podcast to be so high quality. I want that to be like the meme. It's not this like Marvel movie. It's not this James Cameron creation. It's not, it's not a TED Talk or 60 Minutes or an interview with the president. No, I want it to just be me talking with other people about stupid shit. But I want it to be the absolutely best of the stupid shit. The highest quality video of the lowest quality podcast. And that will be my promise. It's in 16K. It's worthless, but man, it looks good. He doesn't look good, but it looks good. That's what I want. Yeah. Yeah, like if I got like several microphones all around me and I could somehow stitch them together, the audio file. Nothing kills me more than hearing a timer on the oven. My God. It just so the die has been cast. Real quick aside at the very end. Turn off that timer. It seems that no matter what, something's coming in the next 6 days. Perhaps it's a Biden administration. Perhaps. Perhaps there was cheating in the election and the CCP put in their guy. That's what I believe, but I also acknowledge that I may be living in my own bubble of cognitive dissonance. That's a reality. And it wouldn't be cognitive dissonance if you recognized it, right? General Thomas McCurney said that Trump and co monitored election fraud live and they let it happen because it's not shoplifting until you leave the store. 25,000 troops in the Capitol. Who knows? There is one thing I do hope, though, and I'm legitimately not trying to fence sit or to virtue signal. I legitimately hope just that the right thing happens. If there was cheating, let Trump be elected and let those who cheated be punished. If there was not cheating, let there be a peaceful transition of power. I do not want Trump to stage a coup, and I do not want Biden getting in to be a CCP coup. I want whatever happened, I want the truth to prevail. If that means Biden legitimately got elected, and this is my own, despite it seem hairy that watch the election pause in the middle of the night in 5 states at the same time, and then all of those leads slowly erased overnight. As much as I cannot believe that was an anomaly, I must consider that I laughed at all of my liberal friends over the last 4 years for thinking that Trump was a Russian agent, and nothing came out, and nothing came out, and nothing came out. And them saying, well, it doesn't matter, he still is. And it's like, well, you don't have any evidence, so now you're just choosing your own reality. Trump has to show undeniable, earth-shattering evidence that there was cheating, or otherwise this is just my own reality that I'm creating. And that's the facts. So I think in 6 days, I do hope that peace happens. Either there's shown that there's election fraud and those guilty are punished, and the office of the president remains untainted. If there was not fraud, and the only way Trump wouldn't show evidence is if he did not have it, because you're not the president with 18 intelligence agencies at your fingertips, and you somehow missed it. Because whatever I saw, they saw. If he does not show it, then as hard as it is for me to wrap my head around, it means that these are my own biases that are showing me that he was cheated out of it. And like, I can't wrap my, because I watched with my eyes the counting pause and then slowly go backwards or reverse the lead. But I also recognize that if there is no evidence is shown, and it's not, that doesn't mean that they didn't have it. Though the courts won't hear me. And I'm with you, it's fucked up, but the courts won't hear him out. You are the president, you do have an emergency broadcast system, you can do whatever you would like. So if he does not show fraud, I can only conclude that there was no fraud. Now, you could argue there was fraud, but the people within his administration aren't listening either. Sure, I could see that, right? The whole thing is corrupted from within. What happens when you call the police department and the police department's in on the crime, right? Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Who watched The Watchmen, The Mirror? I think he would be able to get, if he was that desperate, I think he would be able to get the message out, right? If he can still give a speech somewhere, I imagine he can get on a camera, say something, and give a micro SD to his son and have his son mail it to a friend and have his friend upload it on Instagram, right? So if he does, if there's fraud, Who's yelling downstairs? I'll think the. I think they'll we'll see the evidence. I think the only way we don't see evidence is if there was no fraud, and it's hard for me to comprehend that because I love Trump. I think, and I get it. I'm a fucking Nazi, white supremacist, xenophobe. I've heard it all before. Shut up. But if no fraud is shown, if no evidence is shown, and not in the sense that they did show up, but the courts wouldn't hear it, if he can't just even put it on the emergency broadcast system, then that can only mean that there was none. And maybe counting did stop. That's in as much as I can't wrap my head around that. I have to be self-aware enough to acknowledge that will then be my own cognitive dissonance if it's not shown. I don't see there any way that the CCP wins, because if the CCP really did help Biden and the DNC commit election fraud, I think Trump will show it. The courts won't hear him. I think he'll show it. It's the fucking United States government that will put it on every screen in America. If he truly is surrounded by traitors and he can't even get the message out, he'll find a way. He'll say it in Morse code. If he did not, if he can't show any evidence, I think it's because there is none. And then I'll just have to accept that. I'll just have to accept that I'm living in my own reality, and that I'm seeing what I want to see. And I can only hope that one day I will be able to look back at this and say, oh man, you were in such a cognitive delusion hole of your own confirmation biases. Because when I liked George Bush as a high schooler, I couldn't think anything outside of that. When I liked Obama, I could have never thought anything outside of that. When I liked Romney, I could never think outside of that. When I liked Bernie, I could never think outside of that. And when I like Trump now, admittedly, I can't think outside of it. My gut feeling says that something fishy happened. That oven timer, I swear to God, I'm going to firebomb my own house. God, give me strength. If there's no evidence shown, then I think it's because there isn't any. And I don't think that's the case. That timer, I swear to God in heaven. Good Lord in heaven. God, give me strength. If no evidence is shown, I think it's because there isn't any. If there is, I don't think there's any gray area. I think if no evidence is shown, we will not see any over the next 6 days. If there is no evidence, it's because if no evidence is shown over the next 5 days, it's because there is none, and we will not see any because fraud did not happen. I think the only other possibility is there was fraud, and it's not shoplifting until you leave the premises, and they let the fraud go through, and a lot of people are going to be arrested. And that sounds insane, but a year ago, if you had said you wouldn't be able to go to church because the government said so, you'd say I was crazy too. You'd probably still say I'm crazy. If a year ago you went back and looked at this podcast and said in a year he will have a full salary off that podcast, it'd look just as insane. Here we are. So if we do not see evidence in the next, what would it be? That would be 5 days. Should be 5 days. 12 hours, 19 hours. 12 days, 19 hours, and 48 minutes. If we do not see evidence in the next 5 days, 19 hours, and 48 minutes, I think that's right. It's because there is none. And if there is none, it's not because of incompetence, it's because it didn't happen. If we do see evidence in the next 5 days, 19 hours, and 48 minutes, I think it will be overwhelming. I think there will be a lot of people going to jail. I think it will be biblical. I think that's why there's 25,000 troops in DC cleared to carry ammunition, live ammunition, first time ever on U.S. soil. I don't know. I don't know. If you won, why would you go so far out of your way to impeach, to invoke the 25th, and to censor? Why would you not just run out the clock? That's what my gut feeling says. But am I living in my own bubble of cognitive dissonance? I think I would have to say that is a possibility, because to say that it's not a possibility, that I'm living in a bubble of my own disillusion, that is indicative of living in a bubble of your own delusion. I am smart because I know that I know nothing. Right? That's the more I know, the less I know. So although my gut, as of Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 4:14 p.m. Eastern Time, I think there was fraud. Well, it already went through all the legal, it was certified. It was, well, if the whole system is rotted, of course it is. I called the cops, and the cops said that there was no crime. Well, if the cops are in on the crime, they're not going to say there's a crime. The CIA investigated itself and said there was nothing wrong. Wow. In my heart of hearts, I believe there was fraud. It doesn't pass the sniff test. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. We never found WMDs, and the vice president's corporation, in which he was the former CEO of, cleared $40 billion in profit. Halliburton, Dick Cheney, doesn't pass the sniff test. Seems a little hairy. This doesn't pass the sniff test to me, but I have to, because if I can't embrace the possibility that I'm wrong, then my God, I have halted my own evolution. We talked about single-celled organisms and evolution through opposable thumbs and space travel. I'm going to cut this last part off, this election thing, and upload it as its own separate piece. So you'll probably be watching this long before the whole episode's uploaded. We talked about space and shit. How Elon Musk is essentially an opposable thumb. I do think that there was fraud. I do think that the hammer's going to drop. 25,000 troops something's not. That ain't normal. Okay, sure, but maybe argue that, if, so the right, and myself, I was there, truly believe the election was stolen. Sure, let's entertain this. Let's say it is disinfo by the Trump campaign because he doesn't want to leave office, right? Okay, I'll entertain that. I'll hear it out. I'll bite. What happens? We'll go raid the Capitol. Contrary to what some people have said, I videotaped myself the whole time. It did nothing, but I did watch people break shit, and it did, it looks insanely violent. No different than a BLM or Antifa rally, but I'm a Nazi for saying that. But sure, but let's go with that. I'll try to drop my biases. Let's go with that, right? Pretty violent, a lot of people, and that was just for certification. What happens when there's an actual inauguration, and it's people that truly believe they were wronged? Sure, okay, you need to bring in 25,000 troops for that. I get it, overwhelming force. You probably don't need it, but have so many that the other side doesn't even show up. Don't bring enough to beat them. Bring enough to put them into a state of despair so they don't even show up. That's what I think. I mean, I see that as a possibility. Am I living in my own bubble? Am I living in my own bubble where I look at it as, no, he's lining up the troops because he's going to go in and arrest all these Congress members for treason? That's what I believe. but I have to acknowledge that I might be living in my own bubble. And that has to be a possibility, because no one has ever known everything. We know all this, and we also know the world's flat. It's like, well, you got most of it right. You're good on the math, and you're good on, whatever, but no, that's not right. The world's not flat. We know the world's not flat, and we also know man will never fly. And no, you were right on the calculus, you were right on the biology, but nope, we can fly. So I have to acknowledge that there might be a reality that I am not considering, or that I am consciously or unconsciously blocking out. I don't think that's the case, but no one who's wrong has ever not thought that they were right. But to me, it does usher in some peace. If something bad happened, I truly believe Trump will show it. And if nothing bad happened, I think that's the only reason why he won't show it, is because there's nothing to show. And in which case, it's not a CCP coup. It's just the candidate that I didn't like happened to win. And this isn't Tommy country. This is America. There's 346 million of us. You cast your vote. It didn't work. Get them next time. That's not what I believe. I believe there's fraud. I believe that Dominion, I believe all that shit is rigged, and I don't think there will ever be another free election again. And if that's the case, I think Trump will show that. If Trump doesn't show it, it's because it didn't happen. This is an exercise in me trying to entertain things that maybe I don't believe as it's my own growth. I was always going to be a doctor. I could have never believed that I wouldn't be a doctor. And if I ever wasn't going to be a doctor, it's going to be because I didn't get in. If you had told me, no, you do get in, but you decide not to go, I would have thought you were smoking crack. So I have to acknowledge that I might be living in my own bubble. I don't think I am, but does anyone living in their own bubble think they are? No, none of them think they do. Inversely, maybe that's what the 25,000 troops are for. It's for everyone like me living in their own bubble that believes that the election was rigged. Or, let's say it was rigged. I think it was. Let's say it was rigged, and let's say it's overturned, and a new Trump administration comes in. There's going to be a lot of people on the other side whose bubbles were burst. And thus you would need 25,000 troops. So either way, you know what? It's probably good we have 25,000 troops there. Because we're going to be bursting some bubbles. And when you burst bubbles, soap gets in your eyes. And you get upset. So the troops are there. Because even L'Oreal is bullshit. All soap hurts. And the troops are going to be some fresh water. Well, we're alive today. God bless everybody. Stay safe. Thank you for watching the podcast. It means the world to me. You guys are making my dream come true. I hope that I entertain you. And, yeah, everything on this podcast is my opinion and nothing more. I mean, some things are backed by fact, but thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. And, whatever. Shout out Garrett. Shout out AJ. Shout out Cairo.